The relentless hum of the fluorescent lights in Northwood High's dilapidated science lab was a constant companion to Alex Mercer. At 17, Alex was a paradox. A mind capable of unraveling the most complex theoretical physics, yet outwardly a withdrawn, unassuming figure, often hunched over a workbench, his brow furrowed in concentration. His clothes, though clean, were perpetually a size too large, giving him an almost childlike appearance that belied the intricate machinery of his thoughts. He moved with a quiet efficiency, his presence often unnoticed by the boisterous crowds that filled the school hallways. His hands, slender and precise, were more accustomed to delicate soldering work and the intricate manipulation of microchips than the rough and tumble of teenage life. He found solace in the ordered logic of circuits and algorithms, a stark contrast to the chaotic, often cruel social dynamics of high school. Alex's true sanctuary was his small, cluttered garage workshop at home. It was a haven crammed with discarded electronics, tangled wires, and the faint, comforting scent of ozone and solder. Here, amidst the organized chaos, he spent countless hours, his mind alight with ideas that soared far beyond the mundane confines of his small town. He wasn't just building. He was dreaming, striving to push the boundaries of what was possible. His current obsession, the culmination of years of quiet dedication, was the ether pulse generator. He envisioned it as a revolutionary device, a low-energy, highly efficient method for atmospheric energy harvesting. In his mind, it could provide clean, limitless power, a solution to the world's burgeoning energy crisis. He saw it not as a path to fame or fortune, but as a genuine contribution to humanity, a quiet, profound way to make a difference. His notebooks, filled with dense equations and intricate schematics, were his most prized possessions, each page a testament to his relentless pursuit of scientific truth. He was driven by a pure, unadulterated curiosity and a deep-seated desire to solve real-world problems. The annual Northwood High Science Fair, though seemingly a local event, was a major stepping stone for students with scientific aspirations. For Alex, it was more than just a competition. It was a rare opportunity to showcase his innovation, to perhaps gain access to resources he desperately needed, and for his work to be seen by someone who might truly understand its potential. He knew it was a long shot, but a glimmer of hope persisted. He saw it as a chance to validate his existence, to prove that his quiet pursuits held significant value. He dreamed of a world where his intellect, not his social awkwardness, defined him. One particularly grueling afternoon in the school lab, while trying to calibrate a sensitive sensor for his ether pulse generator, Alex found himself a familiar target. Mark Jenkins, the school's star athlete and resident bully, sauntered over with his usual sneering entourage. Mark, with his towering height and cruel grin, embodied the casual cruelty of their high school hierarchy. He resented Alex's quiet intelligence, seeing it as an affront to his own popularity and perceived dominance. "Still playing with your little toys, Mercer?" Mark sneered, his voice dripping with false concern, loud enough for others to hear. "Think you're gonna build a rocket ship in your mommy's garage? Don't forget to pack your lunch for space, nerd." His friends snickered, their eyes filled with amusement and thinly veiled contempt. Alex felt the familiar flush of humiliation creep up his neck. His instinct was to shrink, to disappear, to make himself as invisible as possible, as he always did. He clutched his wrench tighter, his knuckles white. The words stung, echoing years of being underestimated, overlooked, and ridiculed. He considered simply packing up his project and walking away from the science fair altogether. What was the point? He was just a target. But then, his gaze fell upon a small, intricate diagram taped to his workbench, a preliminary sketch of a larger-scale ether pulse generator, specifically designed to power an entire off-grid community. It was a diagram he had shared once, tentatively, with his ailing grandmother, who had always encouraged his scientific pursuits, seeing him not as odd, but as brilliant. She had dreamt of clean energy for her remote village, a place where people struggled for basic resources. A surge of quiet defiance, a fierce protective instinct, ignited within him. This wasn't just about his project, it was about the hope it represented. the promise he had made to himself and to her. He would not let Mark, or anyone, extinguish that hope. He would not accept this quiet defeat. He had to finish it, not just for himself, but for the countless others who might benefit from his work. As Mark and his cronies finally moved on, their laughter echoing down the hallway, Alex overheard a hushed conversation between Mr. Harrison, the science teacher, and a tall, distinguished woman with an air of quiet authority. She wore a discreet pin with the NASA logo. This was Dr. Eris Thorne, a renowned astrophysicist and scout for NASA's burgeoning Project Nova, a highly classified initiative focused on cutting-edge energy solutions for deep space exploration. She was known for her unorthodox approach to talent scouting, often looking beyond traditional academic credentials for true, disruptive genius. She had been observing Alex, discreetly for some time, intrigued by the complexity of his preliminary designs for the ether pulse generator, which she had stumbled upon in an obscure online forum dedicated to theoretical energy harvesting. "The potential is immense, Mr. Harrison," she murmured, her voice low but intense. "His theoretical work on atmospheric energy conversion, it's decades ahead of its time. But his practical application seems to be elusive. The prototypes he's posted online have never quite materialized." Mr. Harrison sighed, glancing at Alex's workbench with a mixture of respect and pity. "He's brilliant, Dr. Thorne, truly brilliant, but he struggles with funding, with resources, and with, well, the social dynamics here. He gets no support." "I saw that," Dr. Thorne replied, her gaze lingering on Alex's hunched form. "The bullying. It's a tragedy. Such a fragile mind, yet capable of so much." She paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I'm looking for disruptive thinkers, Mr. Harrison, not just perfect results. The science fair. It's a test of resilience, too." She pulled a small silver pen from her pocket, clicking it thoughtfully. "I've been following his online posts for months. His initial theoretical papers, they were startlingly accurate, predicting energy signatures no one else had conceived. But then, his attempts at physical prototyping seemed to hit a wall. His last few forum updates hinted at a breakthrough, but then abruptly stopped. It's almost as if he's deliberately sabotaging himself, or something is preventing him from completing his work. There's a missing piece, a disconnect between his genius and its manifestation." Her words "deliberately sabotaging himself" snagged in Alex's mind, a jarring, almost painful dissonance. He knew the truth was far more insidious. Suddenly, a fragmented memory, sharp and unsettling, pierced through the fog of his past, a past he rarely allowed himself to revisit. He saw a fleeting image, a stern-faced, impeccably dressed man, older, with a cold, piercing gaze, standing over him, a blueprint for a similar yet subtly different energy generator in his hand. He heard whispers from a distant past, fragmented conversations about a family betrayal, a scientific breakthrough stolen, a patent illegally acquired. He recalled overhearing hushed arguments between his parents and this man, a man whose features, even faded by time, bore an unsettling resemblance to Dr. Thorne, not identical, but a familial echo in the severe jawline and keen eyes. He remembered a prototype, small and humming, being violently smashed by this man, a chilling threat against ever pursuing his research. It was a memory he had suppressed for years, an unspoken trauma that had silently shaped his reluctance to fully realize his inventions. The realization dawned on him with chilling certainty. Dr. Eris Thorne might not be a stranger, but a forgotten, cold relative, perhaps even a descendant of the very person who had stolen his family's original intellectual property decades ago. The pieces began to click into place, connecting the fragmented memories of scientific betrayal, the sudden, unsettling familiarity of Thorne's face, and his own subconscious fear of bringing his inventions to full fruition. This potential familial connection, combined with the imminent public failure at the science fair and Mark's relentless bullying, transformed his quiet desperation into a burning resolve. The fight was no longer just about a science project. It was about his past, his identity, and a truth that had been buried for too long. He could no longer remain a silent victim. He had to confront Thorne, not just to prove his genius, but to uncover the truth of his own origins, linking his personal struggle to a much larger buried family secret. This was his point of no return. He would finish the ether pulse generator, not just for the science fair, but to reclaim his legacy and expose the long-hidden betrayal. The crisp morning air usually carried the promise of a fresh canvas for Ethan, a new story waiting to unfold on the grimy brick walls or the forgotten alleyways of Viridia. But today, the air felt different, heavy with a suffocating dread. His customary street corner, the very patch of sidewalk that had become his outdoor studio, his sanctuary, his only reliable spot for visibility and occasional sales, was suddenly swarming with city officials. They moved with an unsettling efficiency, erecting signs that declared the area a no-artist zone, citing vague, urban beautification initiatives and public order regulations. A chill deeper than the morning air seeped into Ethan's bones. This draconian order, he instinctively knew, was no random bureaucratic whim. It was a direct hit. He'd seen the scathing articles, the thinly veiled contempt in the city's most prestigious art columns. This ban was a direct result of complaints lodged by Julian Thorne, the city's most influential and notoriously arrogant art critic. Thorne, a man whose pronouncements could make or break careers, viewed street art as nothing more than glorified graffiti, a blight on the urban landscape, an eyesore that polluted the refined aesthetic of true art. He had specifically singled out Ethan's work in his recent widely read column, dismissing it with sneering disdain, as crude, unsophisticated, and an insult to true artistic expression. He had even gone so far as to imply that street artists were little more than vagrants masquerading as creators, devoid of formal training or genuine talent. For Thorne, art was a controlled, exclusive realm, only accessible through the hallowed halls of academia and elite galleries. Ethan, with his spray cans and his canvas on a sidewalk, represented everything Thorne despised: authenticity, accessibility, and a raw, untamed spirit. The official declaration, nailed unceremoniously to a lamppost near Ethan's usual spot, directly threatened his livelihood. It was more than just a ban on painting. It was an attempt to silence his voice, to erase his presence, to extinguish the spark of creativity that had kept him alive. It felt like a personal attack, a deliberate act of cultural censorship designed to push him, and others like him, further into the shadows. Ethan's initial reaction was a bitter cocktail of resignation and profound helplessness. The streets were all he knew. Every other promising spot he'd tried in the past had eventually been claimed or regulated. This ban felt like the final blow, robbing him of his last shred of dignity and purpose. His first instinct, honed by years of survival, was to simply disappear, to find another forgotten alley, to fade into the anonymous background of the city. He could try to sell his art in secret, perhaps, or find menial labor to survive. The weight of the city, vast and indifferent, pressed down on him, threatening to crush the last vestiges of his spirit. But as he began to pack up his sparse supplies, his few precious cans of spray paint, his worn brushes, the half-finished canvas, he noticed the sad, knowing faces of the few regulars who genuinely appreciated his art. There was old Mrs. Gable, who always bought a postcard-sized sketch of a city pigeon for her grandson, her eyes always crinkling with warmth. There were the construction workers from the site across the street, who paused their lunch breaks to watch him, offering gruff but genuine words of admiration. And he remembered the incandescent joy on the little girl's face just yesterday when he gave her the bird sketch. The simple beauty of art bringing light to a difficult life. A quiet rage, cold and steady, began to simmer within him. This ban wasn't just about him. It was about silencing the voices of the marginalized, about art being accessible only to the elite, about dictating what was considered worthy and what was deemed trash. It was about power, not aesthetics. A forgotten memory, hazy yet potent, surfaced in his mind. His grandmother, a fiercely independent woman with paint-stained fingers and a mischievous glint in her eye, passionately advocating for art for the common people, for beauty to be found in every corner of life, not just within the gilded cages of galleries. She had believed art was a conversation, a bridge, not a barrier. This surge of memory, a faint echo of her indomitable spirit, ignited a dormant fire within Ethan. He couldn't let this injustice stand. He felt a profound moral obligation to fight for the right of art to exist freely, especially outside the rigid, self-serving definitions imposed by critics like Thorne. This ban, he realized, was not just a threat to his livelihood, but an assault on the very soul of art itself. His resolve solidified. He would not disappear. He would not be silenced. This was his point of no return. Later that afternoon, seeking refuge from a sudden downpour in the cramped, humid interior of a greasy spoon diner, Ethan huddled over a lukewarm coffee. Through the condensation-streaked window, he saw a junior city official, a nervous, fresh-faced man, meeting with a well-dressed gallery owner. Their conversation, though hushed, carried across the cramped space. "Julian Thorne," the gallery owner grumbled, stirring his coffee with exaggerated frustration. "He's curating the Viridia Modern Art Showcase this year. It's supposed to be the exclusive, invitation-only exhibition celebrating true genius. But it's going to be a disaster. Thorne only promotes what he understands, which is to say, what's established. He despises anything new, anything that challenges his narrow view, especially anything from outside his elite circles. He believes only artists with a classical academic background can truly contribute to art." The mention of classical academic background and elite circles struck a deep, resonant chord within Ethan. His cup clattered softly against the saucer. Fragmented memories, not of the harsh, cold streets, but of a grand, sunlit studio from his early childhood, suddenly flashed before his eyes. He saw himself, a much younger boy, in that studio, filled with the rich scent of oil paint, the gentle hum of classical music, and the quiet presence of a stern but loving tutor. He recalled patiently being taught intricate classical techniques, lessons far beyond what any self-taught street artist would typically know. He remembered being surrounded by expensive canvases, ancient art books, and hushed conversations about his family's legacy. A prominent name in art history, a lineage of celebrated artists, now seemingly erased from his conscious memory. He'd always dismissed these flashes as childhood fantasies, fragmented dreams from a traumatic past. But now, in the context of Julian Thorne's rigid definition of true art, they felt chillingly real. The pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving began to click into place. His early artistic prowess, the effortless way he understood composition and color theory, his innate ability to blend classical techniques with modern expression. It wasn't just raw talent, it was training, it was lineage. And the silver locket, the one that hummed with a strange warmth against his skin, suddenly felt heavier, imbued with a new, profound significance. The realization dawned on him with a jolt. Julian Thorne might not just be a pretentious critic, he might be connected to Ethan's forgotten past. Perhaps Thorne was even someone who had directly benefited from his family's disappearance from the art world, someone whose own standing had been elevated by the systematic erasure of a rival lineage. The very idea sent a tremor through him, a mix of fear and righteous anger. This potential familial connection, combined with the imminent threat to his artistic freedom, transformed his quiet desperation into a burning resolve. He could no longer remain a silent, dismissed artist, content to simply survive. He had to confront Thorne, not just to reclaim his spot on the street, but to uncover the truth of his own artistic heritage and challenge the very definition of art itself. The battle for his street corner was now a battle for his identity, his past, and the very soul of art. He would fight fire with fire, paint with truth. The air in the esteemed Thorne Gallery shimmered with an almost suffocating aura of exclusivity and self-importance. Crystal chandeliers, suspended like glittering ice formations, dripped light onto a polished marble floor that reflected the dazzling jewels and impeccably tailored suits of Viridia's wealthiest art patrons. The scent of expensive perfumes and aged oak mingled with the subtle, clinical tang of freshly restored canvases, creating an atmosphere that felt both pristine and profoundly sterile. This was the hallowed ground where Julian Thorne, the city's most influential and notoriously arrogant art critic, held court. He moved with an air of absolute authority, his every gesture a subtle pronouncement, his every word considered gospel by the sycophantic crowd that orbited him. His presence filled the vast hall, his booming voice echoing with pronouncements about true art and the regrettable decline of aesthetic purity in modern times. He was the undisputed arbiter of taste, and he reveled in the power that came with it. Ethan Vance felt like an intruder, a discordant note in this carefully orchestrated symphony of privilege. He was disguised, barely, in a borrowed, ill-fitting dark suit, its fabric too coarse, its cut too unfamiliar. It clung awkwardly to his lean frame, a stark contrast to his usual paint-stained practical wear. It was a thin shield against the penetrating gazes of the gallery's patrons, but it allowed him to blend, a shadow among the light, slipping through the clusters of people admiring the art on display. His heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs, a rhythm of both fear and fierce determination. He had spent days planning this, researching the gallery's layout, observing Thorne's habits, fueled by a desperate need to save his art, his livelihood, and to unearth the truth of his forgotten past. He had walked past the gallery countless times, a phantom on the outside looking in, never imagining he would step inside, let alone confront its powerful gatekeeper. At the heart of it all stood Julian Thorne, radiating an aura of cultivated power. He was an imposing figure, his silver hair impeccably coiffed, his tailored suit a second skin that emphasized his broad shoulders and commanding posture. His charm, when deployed, was as sharp and precise as a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through any dissenting opinion with a dismissive wave of his hand or a subtly raised eyebrow. Tonight, he was giving an impromptu, highly theatrical speech about the sanctity of classical art and the enduring genius of tradition, his voice smooth and confident, implicitly justifying his disdain for street art and any form of unconventional expression. He spoke of art as a sacred lineage, reserved for those with the proper lineage and academic pedigree, a veiled dig at anything that dared to exist outside his narrow, privileged definition. His words were a thinly veiled attack on artists like Ethan, an assertion of his absolute authority in the art world. Art, Thorne declared, his voice resonating through the gallery, is not found on grimy walls or in haphazard bursts of color. It is refined, it is educated, it is a testament to discipline and a glorious past. A polite applause followed, a testament to his hypnotic influence over the crowd. Ethan watched him, a knot of dread and fierce resolve twisting in his stomach. Thorne was the type B antagonist, a personification of arrogant elitism and entrenched prejudice. He didn't seek to destroy for personal gain like a truly malicious villain. Rather, his primary motivation was to preserve his own worldview, to maintain a rigid hierarchy in an art world he believed only he truly understood and could properly guide. His method was public scorn and dismissive rhetoric, wielding his influence like a weapon, crushing anything that threatened his carefully constructed order. He saw himself not as an oppressor, but as a guardian of artistic purity. As Thorne briefly stepped away from the main cluster of admirers, his back momentarily turned to the glittering crowd as he accepted a glass of chilled white wine from a passing waiter. Ethan seized his chance. His palms were sweating, clammy inside the unfamiliar suit jacket, but his resolve was iron. He approached him, moving as discreetly as possible through the eddying currents of conversation, his eyes fixed on Thorne's profile. "Mr. Thorne?" he murmured, his voice barely a whisper above the polite din of the gala, a fragile thread woven into the tapestry of background chatter. He felt a tremor of anticipation, a surge of adrenaline that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Thorne turned, his gaze dismissive, then hardening into a cold, critical appraisal as he took in Ethan's slightly disheveled appearance. His eyes, accustomed to judging every nuance of aesthetic presentation, swept over him, cataloging his obvious discomfort in the expensive clothes, the slight trembling of his hands. "Can I help you, young man? Are you lost? This is a private event," he said, his voice polite but edged with an unmistakable, condescending disdain. There was an unspoken command in his tone, a clear expectation that Ethan would simply disappear. Without a word, Ethan reached into the inner pocket of his ill-fitting jacket. His fingers closed around the small, intricately carved wooden bird charm. It was not the silver locket. That was too precious, too deeply personal for this initial public gambit. This was a replica, carefully carved by Ethan himself from a piece of discarded wood, its surface smoothed and aged, to mimic the original's unique design and the material it was meant to evoke. He held it out, just enough for Thorne to see, for the gallery's spotlight to catch its worn, ancient surface and the distinctive Celtic knot etched into its wing. It was a test, a calculated risk to see if Thorne would recognize the design and the implications it carried. Thorne's face, usually a mask of controlled composure, flickered. A flash of shock, raw and undeniable, crossed his features. His eyes, cold and calculating just moments before, widened, then narrowed into icy slits of recognition as he stared at the familiar Celtic knot design. The pleasant murmur of the crowd seemed to recede, the clinking of glasses fading into a distant echo as Thorne's world narrowed to this small, unassuming piece of carved wood. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl, barely audible above the polite murmurs of the surrounding conversations. His hand, gripping the wineglass, trembled almost imperceptibly. "Where did you get that?" The sudden intensity in his voice was chilling, completely out of character for the usually unflappable critic, betraying a deep, visceral fear. He quickly regained his composure, his jaw tightening, forcing himself to appear calm. But the brief tremor in his hand as he gripped his wineglass was noticeable to anyone observing closely. "Security!" he snapped, his voice still low but carrying an undeniable command, a sharp, almost guttural sound. "This person is trespassing. Remove him at once." He made a dismissive gesture, a flick of his wrist as if swatting away a fly, but his gaze remained fixed on the wooden charm, a mixture of fear and furious contempt warring in his eyes. He quickly scanned the room, ensuring no one else had truly noticed his momentary lapse of control. Two burly security guards, already moving at his subtle signal, began to close in on Ethan. Their movements were swift, practiced, designed to be unobtrusive, yet entirely effective. This was it, his one chance. He knew he had to make Thorne understand, to prove his connection, to truly rattle the man before he was swallowed by the anonymous crowd and expelled from the gallery. He remembered fragmented whispers from his earliest childhood, not just about an art lineage, but about a specific, almost mythical family tradition tied to the creation of the locket itself, a secret passed down through generations of artists in his bloodline, a code word of sorts. He focused, the words forming on his tongue, a very specific, deeply personal phrase associated with the craftsmanship and hidden meaning of the Celtic knot on the locket, a phrase only a select few, intimately connected to his family's ancient artistic legacy, would know. He knew this was a gamble, but it was his only move. As the guards reached for him, their hands large and imposing, Ethan straightened his shoulders, drawing a deep breath that tasted of dust and stale perfume. His voice, though soft and strained with nerves, carried a surprising force, cutting through the murmurs of the gala like a silver thread, a clear bell tolling amidst the polite din. Through shadow and light, the threads entwine. The artist's soul, a lineage divine. Only those who truly see behold the hidden artistry within the Celtic tree. He didn't just speak the words. He let a raw, unyielding passion infuse them, his eyes locking with Thorne's, a desperate plea for recognition, a challenge to Thorne's very perception of art. He felt the silver locket beneath his shirt warm against his skin, a silent affirmation. The words hung in the air, utterly out of place amidst the clinking glasses and polite laughter. This cryptic phrase, a family motto known only to the innermost circles of his forgotten artistic lineage, delivered with such unexpected clarity and emotional depth by a seemingly unknown street artist, was his unveiling, a subtle yet undeniable proof of his profound familial connection to a renowned, perhaps even ancient, artistic dynasty. It was a direct, undeniable challenge to Thorne's carefully constructed indifference and his assertion of sole authority over the world of art. The silence that followed his words, though brief, was profound, a momentary ripple in the fabric of the evening. Only Julian Thorne and one other person truly heard and comprehended the devastating impact of those words. Seated discreetly at a corner table, pretending to enjoy the champagne, was Evelyn Reed. She was a sharp, fiercely independent art curator and gallery owner, Thorne's bitter rival, known for her avant-garde tastes and her relentless championing of emerging, unconventional artists. She was present at the gala, not for the glitz and glamour, but as an observer, always on the lookout for new talent, always sensing the undercurrents of the art world, always alert to Thorne's manipulations. Evelyn, with her keen eye for hidden truths and her finely tuned artistic instincts, immediately noticed Thorne's extreme, almost panicked reaction to the seemingly insignificant street artist. She saw the sudden, chilling shift in Thorne's demeanor, the quick, desperate masking of emotion, the rapid dispatch of security, and the cryptic, deeply personal nature of Ethan's desperate plea. She sensed a profound hidden story, a narrative thread just waiting to be pulled, a challenge to Thorne's narrow, prejudiced views that resonated deeply with her own artistic philosophy. She had always believed that true art lay beyond the superficial, and in Ethan's passionate outburst, she felt the tremor of something real, something revolutionary. Thorne, momentarily stunned by the obscure reference, hesitated. His eyes, usually so calculating, held a flicker of genuine fear before hardening into cold fury. That brief lapse was all Ethan needed. The guards, confused by the poetic outburst, briefly faltered in their approach, their faces betraying uncertainty. Ethan used the moment, darting forward, ducking past them with surprising agility, and slipping into a service corridor, melting away into the labyrinthine back passages of the Grand Hall. He knew the layout from his reconnaissance, a ghost moving through the unseen arteries of the gallery. Thorne, recovering quickly, barked orders at his security team. "Find him, now, and get that charm, it's vital." His voice was low, furious, trembling with an almost uncontained rage. His composure was visibly shaken, but he forced a strained, fixed smile back onto his face as he returned to the main stage, continuing his speech about the enduring legacy of art with an unnerving, forced sincerity. His eyes, however, darted nervously towards the service corridor. He immediately dispatched his most trusted and ruthless enforcer, Marcus, a former military intelligence officer now working as his head of security, a man known for his icy efficiency and complete lack of scruples. "Bring him to me," Thorne instructed, his voice low and dangerous. "And retrieve the charm. Ensure he disappears permanently once it's retrieved. No loose ends. This cannot get out. Not a whisper." His instructions clearly hinted at the true, deeply incriminating significance of the wooden charm, a piece of evidence, perhaps even a key, that could unravel his entire carefully constructed reputation and legacy, exposing not just a lie, but a monumental crime. He then made a series of frantic, whispered phone calls from a secluded alcove, not to the police, but to his most trusted legal counsel, and to a shadowy figure in a distant, offshore location, someone he had relied on for decades to keep his secrets buried. His words were terse, filled with thinly veiled panic, revealing his complicity in a deeply buried, potentially criminal secret involving the systematic erasure of an entire artistic bloodline, Ethan's direct lineage, and the illicit acquisition of invaluable artworks and intellectual property decades ago. The stakes had just been raised from a simple street artist's plea to a deadly game of cat and mouse, with Ethan's life and Thorne's sprawling illicit empire hanging precariously in the balance. Evelyn Reed, observing Thorne's frantic movements and whispered calls from afar, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips, knew with chilling certainty that this was far more than a simple matter of artistic taste. This was a deep, dark secret, and she intended to uncover it for the sake of art and for the sake of justice. The Grand Gallery of Viridia, usually a bastion of hushed reverence and sterile elegance, was transforming. Under Julian Thorne's meticulous, tyrannical direction, it was being meticulously prepared for the Viridia Modern Art Showcase. This was no mere exhibition. It was to be his magnum opus, a public testament to his impeccable taste and unparalleled influence, an exhibition designed to solidify his legacy and permanently cement his rigid definition of true art. Yet, for Ethan Vance, this glittering monument to elite artistry was becoming a gauntlet, a symbolic arena where he would face his ultimate test. The polished floors and gleaming spotlights felt less like a display of beauty and more like the cold, hard surface of a stage set for a public execution. Every gilded frame, every hushed whisper of a white-gloved assistant seemed to reinforce the chasm between his world and Thorne's. Ethan found himself profoundly alone in this fight, a solitary figure in a dazzling cage. He was allowed into the gallery only through the unlikely intervention of Evelyn Reed, Thorne's shrewd and iconoclastic rival. Evelyn, with her sharp mind and even sharper wit, saw in Ethan not a vagrant, but a raw, untamed talent, a genuine artist whose spirit resonated with her own belief in art's transformative power beyond the confines of tradition. She had secured him a coveted, albeit strategically challenging spot in the Emerging Artists section of the showcase. It was a section Thorne had begrudgingly allowed, viewing it as a necessary evil to feign open-mindedness, a space he intended to fill with bland, easily dismissible works. His plan was to highlight Ethan's piece as the epitome of amateurish street art, publicly ridiculing it to reaffirm his contempt for anything outside his classical purview. He saw Ethan as a convenient scapegoat, a living embodiment of everything he wished to discredit. Liam Carter, the investigative journalist, was a crucial ally in the broader battle against Thorne's corruption, his pen mightier than any spray can. He supplied Ethan with crucial intelligence on Thorne's movements and intentions, confirming the critic's intent to publicly dissect and humiliate Ethan's work. Liam's phone calls were a lifeline, cutting through the oppressive silence of the gallery after hours. "Thorne's been boasting," Liam had whispered during one such call, his voice low and urgent. "He's telling everyone this emerging artists section is just to prove his point that raw talent is meaningless without pedigree. He's specifically mentioned a certain street artist who he intends to educate during the opening night." But in the quiet, agonizing moments before the unveiling, as Ethan stood before his chosen canvas, a massive blank expanse of white, daunting in its emptiness, his hands trembled. He was on his own. The pressure to create something truly transcendent, something that could pierce Thorne's armor of arrogance, weighed heavily on him. He felt the overwhelming solitude of the artist, the solitary burden of conveying truth and beauty in a world that often valued neither. He often found himself staring at the blank canvas for hours, the white surface reflecting his own self-doubt back at him. Could he truly transcend the criticism, the ingrained prejudice, the very system that sought to diminish him? The stakes were immense, a cruel twist of fate, orchestrated by Thorne, added another layer of pressure. Time. Julian Thorne had cunningly manipulated the exhibition schedule. The unveiling of Ethan's controversial piece was slated for the opening night, a mere 48 hours away, placing him directly in the spotlight. Not only would this maximize the public spectacle of Thorne's anticipated mockery, ensuring the widest possible audience for his public denouncement, but it also left Ethan with barely enough time to finish his chosen artwork. He had envisioned a large-scale, intricate mural that merged his signature vibrant street art style with the classical techniques he had faintly recalled from his lost childhood. He wanted it to be a profound statement, a narrative of resilience rising from the depths of urban struggle, a testament to art's ability to thrive anywhere. He planned to incorporate subtle, almost hidden elements of the Celtic knot from his locket into the mural's background. A silent defiance, a whisper of his true lineage, a signature only those with eyes to truly see would recognize. The chosen theme for his piece was Urban Renaissance, depicting a vibrant phoenix rising from crumbling concrete, its wings fashioned from discarded city materials, yet painted with the refined strokes of a master. The ambition of the piece matched the immensity of the challenge. Thorne, meanwhile, was not content with mere public humiliation. He dispatched his most trusted and ruthless enforcer, Marcus, a former military intelligence officer now working as his head of security, to apply psychological pressure. Marcus was a master of subtle intimidation, a shadow moving in the periphery, his presence a constant, unsettling reminder of Thorne's reach. He had bribed minor gallery staff to report on Ethan's progress, ensuring Thorne was kept abreast of every brushstroke, every moment of hesitation. He orchestrated accidental spills near Ethan's canvas, ruining small portions of his paint supply. He ensured vital art supplies, specific shades of spray paint, specialized brushes, were misplaced or out of stock when Ethan needed them most, forcing him to improvise, to adapt, to push himself beyond his limits. He arranged for constant, demoralizing whispers about the futility of street art, about Ethan's lack of a proper degree, about the inherent ugliness of his chosen medium within Ethan's earshot. These were delivered by seemingly innocuous gallery assistants, their smiles polite, but their words sharp as shards of glass. Ethan, hyper-aware of these insidious tactics, felt the tightening vice of Thorne's malevolence. Every moment was a battle, not just against the clock and his own self-doubt, but against the insidious forces actively working to undermine him. His artistic endurance, already stretched by years of hardship, was now pushed past the breaking point. The chill of the gallery, ironically heated for the elite, felt colder than any street corner he'd ever known, a stark reminder of the frigid reception awaiting his work. He forced himself to block out the whispers, to find a rhythm in his strokes, to let the paint speak for him. He remembered the little girl's joyous gasp, the genuine appreciation in her eyes, and that small memory became a shield against the psychological warfare. He thought of his grandmother, her fierce spirit, her belief in art's power to connect, not divide. As the hours bled into the next day, Ethan barely slept. He fueled himself with lukewarm coffee and the sheer force of his will. His hands ached, his eyes burned, but the phoenix on his canvas began to take shape, its form emerging from the chaos, a vibrant testament to resilience. He incorporated discarded circuit boards and old newspaper clippings into the texture of the concrete, spray painting over them with layers of rich, classical oils, creating an interplay of old and new, raw and refined. He worked tirelessly, driven by a desperate need to not only finish the piece, but to imbue it with a message that would defy Thorne's narrow vision. He sketched the Celtic knot over and over, perfecting its subtle integration into the flowing lines of the phoenix's wings, making it almost imperceptible unless one knew exactly where to look. It would be his silent, personal signature, a mark of defiance and a claim to a forgotten legacy. The ultimate test wasn't just about the painting itself, it was about Ethan's resolve. Could he, a street artist who had faced indifference and dismissal his entire life, find the inner strength to confront the most powerful and dismissive voice in the art world? Could he channel his trauma, his lost past, and his burning sense of injustice into a singular, undeniable artistic statement that would resonate beyond the gallery walls and expose the hypocrisy of those who sought to define art for their own gain? The very essence of his identity, the validity of his unique artistic voice, hung in the balance. The canvas before him, once a symbol of boundless possibility, now felt like a battlefield where he fought not just for himself, but for every artist whose voice had been silenced, every piece of beauty dismissed as unworthy. He was alone, armed only with his talent, his truth, and the faint, humming warmth of the silver locket beneath his shirt. The clock was ticking, the seconds bleeding away, and the art world, oblivious to the deeper currents, waited to witness a public execution. But Ethan, amidst the pressure, felt a strange calm settle over him. He was ready. The air in the Grand Gallery crackled with an almost unbearable tension, thick with the scent of expensive champagne, polished wood, and thinly veiled anticipation. The opening night of the Viridia Modern Art Showcase was a spectacle of blinding spotlights, the murmur of hundreds of elite guests, and the clinking of crystal glasses. Julian Thorne, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo that seemed to absorb and reflect the gallery's opulent light, stood at the podium, a smug, self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. He had just finished a lengthy, self-congratulatory speech, extolling the virtues of classical art, and subtly, yet undeniably, denigrating anything that dared to deviate from his rigid aesthetic. His voice, a smooth baritone, filled the vast hall, each word chosen to reinforce his unchallenged authority. The crowd, a sea of glittering faces, hung on his every pronouncement, ready to echo his disdain, to confirm their own superior taste. Ethan's piece, Urban Renaissance, stood covered by a large, opulent velvet cloth in the designated Emerging Artists section. It was strategically placed near a secondary stage, ensuring maximum visibility for Thorne's impending critique, a deliberate positioning that felt less like an honor and more like being placed on a chopping block. Ethan stood nearby, a solitary figure amidst the throng, his borrowed suit feeling like a costume, stiff and alien against his skin, a poor disguise that made him feel more exposed than ever. His heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs, a rhythm of both fear and fierce determination. He could feel the weight of every dismissive glance, every whispered comment about the street artist who had somehow infiltrated their hallowed halls. His hands, hidden deep in the pockets of the uncomfortable suit, clenched around the small, warm silver locket, its intricate Celtic knot a silent talisman of his lost lineage and his defiant truth. He had poured every ounce of his being into the canvas, and now it was about to be judged, not just by critics, but by an entire world that had long dismissed him. Thorne approached the veiled canvas, a wireless microphone now clutched in his manicured hand. His smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes, a glint of pure, anticipated triumph. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice dripping with saccharine condescension, amplified by the gallery's state-of-the-art sound system, "we come to a piece from our emerging artists section. A rather unconventional selection, one might say. An attempt, perhaps, to bridge the gap between, well, let's call it street expression and actual artistry." A ripple of polite, knowing laughter went through the crowd, a collective agreement with Thorne's unspoken judgment. "While I believe in fostering new talent, it is my duty, as a critic, to guide young artists towards true aesthetic principles. And sometimes that guidance must be firm, painfully firm, if necessary." He savored the chuckles, his eyes darting towards Ethan, a subtle taunt. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the anticipation build, the silence stretching taut as a violin string. Then, with a theatrical flourish that seemed designed to emphasize his dominance, he gripped the velvet cloth and, with a sharp, decisive motion, ripped it away. A collective gasp swept through the gallery, sharp and audible, followed by an abrupt, stunned silence. Ethan's mural, Urban Renaissance, blazed forth, a defiant explosion of color and form, utterly defying Thorne's condescending expectations. A majestic phoenix, crafted from vibrant spray paint and carefully integrated discarded urban detritus. Shards of reflective glass from broken windows, intricate circuit boards from defunct electronics, old newspaper clippings detailing forgotten city stories, rose dramatically from a crumbling concrete landscape. Its wings, vast and powerful, were painted with the refined, classical brushstrokes Ethan had subconsciously recalled from his lost childhood, layers of rich oils blending seamlessly with the rough, tactile textures of its urban origins. The light of 1,000 tiny LED lights, subtly embedded within the circuit board elements, pulsed gently, making the phoenix appear to breathe, to pulse with an almost living energy. The overall effect was breathtaking, raw, visceral, yet undeniably elegant, a testament to beauty found in unexpected places. It was a bridge between two worlds, a visual dialogue between grit and grace, and hidden within the intricate patterns of the phoenix's magnificent wings, subtly interwoven into the metallic sheen of the circuit board feathers, were countless tiny, almost imperceptible Celtic knots, a silent, defiant signature from his ancestral past, a mark that only those with a keen eye or a deep secret would recognize. Thorne, for a fraction of a second, froze. His smug smile vanished entirely, replaced by a flicker of raw, unadulterated shock, then a mask of furious contempt. His jaw tightened, a vein throbbing visibly in his temple. He had expected crude graffiti, an amateurish mess, an easy target for his acid tongue. He had not expected this. He had not expected beauty, power, and a subtle mastery that defied his every prejudice, a work that elegantly refuted his entire worldview. He raised the microphone, his voice now strained, a thin tremor in his carefully controlled tone. "As you can see, bold choice of medium. But technique, alas, cannot overcome a lack of traditional subject matter. It is a chaotic representation, lacking the purity of classical forms." Before he could finish, before his dismissive words could regain their power, a familiar figure moved swiftly and purposefully through the stunned crowd. It was Evelyn Reed, Thorne's shrewd and iconoclastic rival, her eyes alight with a mixture of professional awe and triumphant satisfaction. She had seen the whispers of the Celtic knot. She had recognized the fusion of styles, the undeniable raw talent beneath the street art veneer. the mastery that belied Ethan's humble presentation. She strode purposefully to the side of the mural, a wireless mic already in her hand. Having seized the opportunity presented by Thorne's momentary stutter, his unexpected loss of composure. "What you see before you, ladies and gentlemen," Evelyn's voice rang out, clear and resonant, cutting across Thorne's bluster like a sharp, clean chord, "is not merely an unconventional piece. It is a masterpiece, a true fusion of classical discipline and raw, urban authenticity. Look closer. Look at the brushstrokes, the use of color, the composition. This isn't just talent. This is lineage." She pointed a slender finger to a section of the phoenix's wing, where one of the Celtic knots was particularly prominent, its ancient symbol now brought to brilliant light by the gallery's spotlights. "And this motif," she continued, her voice gaining power, resonating with a quiet authority that rivaled Thorne's own, "the ancient Celtic knot. A symbol deeply intertwined with the lost Vance artistic dynasty, a family whose legacy was tragically cut short, and whose unique artistic secrets were thought to be lost forever, perhaps even suppressed." Thorne's face turned ashen, draining of all color. He lunged for Evelyn, his composure completely shattered, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. "Silence, you fool! You know nothing. This is a farce," he hissed, his voice raw with pure, unadulterated panic, his eyes wide with desperate fear. Marcus, Thorne's ruthless head of security, a hulking figure with cold, predatory eyes, suddenly materialized from the shadows, attempting to grab Evelyn, his movements swift and brutal. This was the bated breath moment. The crowd, initially stunned into silence by the mural's unexpected beauty, then by Evelyn's audacious pronouncement, now murmured with confusion, then outright shock. A Vance dynasty? Lost secrets? Thorne's desperate, uncharacteristic outburst, his unbridled fury, confirmed their deepest suspicions. The polished veneer of the gallery crumbled into chaotic whispers, then shouts. But before Marcus could reach Evelyn, before Thorne's panic could completely engulf the scene, Ethan, fueled by a surge of righteous fury and the buzzing warmth of the locket beneath his shirt, acted. He lunged forward, not at Marcus, but towards Thorne, his movements precise and driven by years of suppressed truth. With a powerful, desperate motion, he ripped the small silver locket from his own neck. It swung briefly, catching the light, before he threw it with surprising force. The locket, glinting silver under the spotlights, soared through the air, a metallic bird of truth, directly towards Thorne's face. Thorne instinctively caught it, his reflexes honed by years of quick thinking. But the unexpected impact and sudden pressure of his fingers on the ancient metal triggered a hidden spring. With a soft, almost inaudible click, the locket snapped open. Inside, nestled on either side, were two tiny, perfectly preserved daguerreotypes. One was of a stern but kind-faced woman with flowing red hair, strikingly similar to Ethan's own. The other was of Julian Thorne himself, much younger, his arm draped possessively around a beautiful, radiant woman who bore an undeniable resemblance to Ethan's mother. A wedding band clearly visible on her finger, reflecting in the faint light. It was a photographic portrait from decades ago, a stark, undeniable proof of a deep, illicit connection, a secret hidden for a lifetime. The locket, now open, reflected the blinding lights of the gallery. A quick-thinking cameraman from Liam Carter's independent news team, alerted by Liam to expect something dramatic, had been perfectly positioned. The camera zoomed in, and a crystal-clear, magnified image of the locket's contents flashed onto the giant LED screen behind Thorne. The crowd gasped, a collective, visceral sound of shock and horror. The image was undeniable, irrefutable. Thorne, young and smiling, with Ethan's mother, and another, older image appeared momentarily beside it, provided by Liam's pre-prepared evidence. A scanned copy of a marriage certificate, showing Julian Thorne and Ethan's mother, Eleanor Vance. The public realization was immediate and devastating. Thorne wasn't just dismissing a street artist, he was connected to him. He was not merely an abusive critic, he was a family member, deeply complicit in the very lost lineage he so vehemently scorned. He had married into the family, then systematically erased them. The reaction of the witnesses was a cathartic explosion of emotion. The murmuring crowd erupted into a chaotic roar. Faces moments before filled with polite indifference or veiled condescension, transformed from haughty skepticism to outright shock, then to a collective, thunderous recognition and a furious demand for answers. Gasps turned into shouts, whispers into cries of fraud, liar, conspiracy, the Vance family. Reporters, initially focused on Thorne, now swarmed Ethan and Evelyn, their microphones thrust forward like a hungry pack. Thorne, on stage, stood utterly frozen, the locket clutched in his hand, his face a mask of utter devastation and exposure, his entire world crumbling around him in a cacophony of public condemnation. The triumphant arch of his curated career had just collapsed, not under the weight of a poor review, but under the undeniable, crushing truth of a hidden, despicable lie, exposed by the very legacy he sought to bury. The vindication for Ethan was absolute, swift, and publicly witnessed by the entire art world. The phoenix had truly risen. The Grand Gallery of Viridia, moments ago a stage for Julian Thorne's calculated triumph, had become the scene of his spectacular, irrefutable downfall. The triumphant blare of news sirens, previously a distant hum, now converged directly on the gallery, their flashing lights casting an urgent, chaotic glow over the stunned elite. Julian Thorne, his face a mask of utter devastation, his meticulously coiffed silver hair now disheveled, stood frozen as uniformed officers moved swiftly, decisively, to apprehend him. The locket, Ethan's locket, which had revealed its damning secret in Thorne's own hand, was carefully retrieved by an officer as evidence, secured in a clear plastic bag. Thorne was no longer the untouchable titan of the art world. He was a disgraced criminal, his empire built on deceit now crumbling into dust. He offered no resistance, his arrogance finally shattered by the irrefutable truth that had so dramatically burst forth from a humble piece of street art. The charges against Thorne mounted swiftly, a cascade of legal repercussions echoing the decades of his deceit. He faced not only unprecedented public humiliation, but a torrent of criminal charges: massive fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, and the systematic destruction of evidence related to the erasure of the Vance family lineage. The subsequent investigation, fueled by the widespread public outrage and the undeniable evidence from Ethan's locket, peeled back the layers of Thorne's carefully constructed life. Detectives uncovered a meticulously planned scheme dating back decades, a calculated manipulation of wills, the forging of death certificates, and the ruthless suppression of records to ensure he inherited vast art collections, historical properties, and invaluable intellectual property that rightfully belonged to Ethan's maternal line, the true Vance artistic dynasty. His entire career, built on a foundation of lies and stolen legacy, crumbled. His immense wealth, derived from illicit gains and the exploitation of a stolen heritage, was seized by authorities, and his public image, once synonymous with refined taste and unimpeachable judgment, was irrevocably destroyed. Julian Thorne became a damning symbol of academic elitism, corporate greed, and familial betrayal, his name forever synonymous with deceit and hypocrisy. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, stripped of everything he had valued, a lonely figure in a sterile cell. Marcus, Thorne's ruthless head of security, was also arrested, implicated in multiple felonies, including conspiracy, witness intimidation, and attempted assault on Evelyn Reed. His unwavering, silent loyalty to Thorne ultimately sealed his own grim fate, proving that even a powerful enforcer could not escape the long arm of justice. For Ethan Vance, the initial shock of vindication slowly gave way to a profound, almost overwhelming sense of relief. The whirlwind of media attention eventually subsided, leaving behind a quiet, burgeoning sense of peace, a weight lifted from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he carried. He was unequivocally proven alive, his true identity as the last living heir of the Vance artistic dynasty restored, not just legally through court documents and public record, but in the eyes of a world that had once dismissed him as nothing more than a street vagrant. His long-lost family inheritance, a vast art collection featuring rare masterpieces, historical properties steeped in artistic tradition, and significant financial assets, was finally returned to its rightful owner. He found himself, almost overnight, a man of immense wealth and a figure of profound public interest, an unlikely hero who had unearthed a truth that shook the art world to its core. But Ethan, having endured years of destitution and betrayal, had no interest in personal luxury or opulent living. His heart, shaped by the harsh realities of the streets and the quiet dignity of Mr. Henderson's community center, where he had once sought refuge and found small acts of kindness, guided his choices. His newfound resources were not for personal indulgence. They were for a far more meaningful purpose. His first act, even before the last of Thorne's assets were fully cataloged, was to use his legal standing and the public's overwhelming support to immediately overturn Julian Thorne's ban on street art, reclaiming not just his corner, but ensuring that artists like him would never again be silenced by arbitrary dictates. It was a symbolic victory that resonated deeply with the city's artistic community. He then channeled a significant portion of his inheritance into an ambitious project, the Viridia Art and Community Initiative. This initiative purchased and transformed the very building where his urban renaissance had been unveiled, the Grand Gallery of Viridia itself. It was no longer Thorne's exclusive domain, a gilded cage for elite art, but a public trust. He meticulously renovated it, overseeing every structural and aesthetic detail, transforming it into a modern, thriving hub for art education, social services, and artistic expression for all, especially for Viridia's most vulnerable and underserved populations. He installed state-of-the-art, free studios for emerging artists, vocational training programs focusing on sustainable crafts and digital skills, and a dedicated wing for art therapy for homeless youth, offering a path to healing and self-discovery. He personally oversaw every detail, from comfortable study nooks to brightly lit, airy communal spaces, ensuring every corner resonated with inclusivity, a stark contrast to the gallery's former atmosphere of cold elitism. He renamed it the Phoenix Gallery in Haven, a powerful symbol of rebirth and resilience rising from the ashes of Thorne's prejudice, echoing the theme of his pivotal artwork. Within months, it became a vibrant sanctuary, a beacon of hope, offering warmth, learning, and genuine opportunity to hundreds, a living monument to art's power to heal and unite. Its success was widely documented, serving as a blueprint for similar initiatives nationwide. Beyond the Phoenix Gallery in Haven, Ethan recognized the profound artistic divide that often trapped talented individuals from disadvantaged communities. He leveraged his resources and newfound influence to establish the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation, a global nonprofit dedicated to fostering artistic education, providing grants for unconventional art forms, and preserving artistic freedom worldwide. His vision was clear: to empower young artists, regardless of their background or preferred medium, to use their creativity for social good, to bridge gaps, not widen them, to create a world where art was a universal language. He personally spearheaded programs to bring art supplies and mentorship into impoverished neighborhoods, proving that a canvas could be found anywhere. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artworks from marginalized artists throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again, tirelessly advocating for art as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. His tireless efforts and genuine humility quickly earned him the respect and admiration of artists and philanthropists globally. Weeks later, a quiet, almost serene afternoon found Ethan sitting with Evelyn Reed and Liam Carter in a newly furnished, brightly lit office within the Phoenix Gallery in Haven. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating newly painted walls and sturdy, comfortable furniture, replacing the oppressive dark wood and heavy velvet of Thorne's era. The room, once Thorne's private study, now served as a collaborative space for the Foundation's advisory board, a place where ideas flowed freely and openly. The entire building hummed with the joyful sounds of children in a new learning lab downstairs, their laughter echoing through the renovated halls, the quiet murmur of conversations in the communal cafe, and the focused hum of artists at work in the shared studios. It was a stark, comforting contrast to the cold, imposing silence it once held under Thorne's tyrannical gaze. Liam, now a celebrated Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist for his fearless role in exposing Thorne, leaned back in his chair, a contented sigh escaping him. He had written extensively about the Vance family's true history, bringing their lost artistic contributions to light. "It's incredible, Ethan," he said, gesturing around the vibrant space, his voice tinged with genuine awe. from battling for a street corner to owning the very gallery that tried to silence you. You've not only reclaimed your legacy, but you've transformed an entire institution. You've achieved something truly extraordinary. You've shown that true art isn't just about what's on the canvas, but the heart behind it. Ethan, now dressed in comfortable, elegant clothes that reflected his inner serenity rather than ostentation, looked at the small, intricately carved silver locket. It was no longer tarnished or dull. Evelyn, without his knowing, had taken it to a discreet, specialized jeweler, having it meticulously cleaned, restored, and infused with a subtle protective layer. It now gleamed softly, hanging on a delicate silver chain around his neck, its intricate Celtic knot design beautifully restored, reflecting the warm light of the afternoon sun. It felt lighter now, no longer a burden of a hidden past, but a symbol of resilience and connection. It was my anchor, wasn't it? He mused, turning the charm over in his fingers, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. It reminded me who I was, even when I had forgotten. It reminded me of the promises I made to myself, to my grandmother, to never let the past define me, but to let it fuel me. And it held the truth. He looked at Evelyn, a silent acknowledgement of her belief in him, and then at Liam, for his unwavering support and partnership in exposing the truth. It reminded me that even when I had nothing else, I still had my truth, my art, and the belief that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness. And that, my friends, he added, his eyes shining with a profound gratitude that radiated from within, that was everything. His journey, once marked by profound suffering and betrayal, was now illuminated by an unwavering purpose, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the transformative magic of art itself. The whispers of the past no longer haunted him. They guided him, reminding him that even the smallest spark of creativity could ignite a revolution, and that true legacy was built not on wealth or fame, but on genuine human connection and shared passion. The once familiar bitterness of the urban wind no longer carried the sting of indifference for Ethan Vance. Now 29, his frame was no longer gaunt, but strong and graceful, his spirit vibrant, his eyes alight with a profound sense of peace and purpose. Viridia, once a backdrop for his despair, had become a thriving testament to his enduring compassion and the transformative power of art. The Phoenix Gallery in Haven, which he had painstakingly brought to life from the ashes of Julian Thorne's elitist institution, had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer a nascent project, but a national model, with bustling branches in 5 major cities across the country, providing comprehensive support to thousands of formerly homeless individuals and families, and serving as dynamic cultural hubs. Each haven was a testament to his vision: free art studios humming with creativity, vocational training programs teaching practical skills, and dedicated wings for art therapy, particularly for at-risk youth, offering solace and self-expression through various mediums. Ethan, though no longer directly managing the daily operations of the Phoenix Gallery in Haven, remained its guiding spirit. He was a beloved fixture, often seen walking through the communal spaces, his presence a quiet anchor for those still navigating their own paths to recovery. He would sit with young residents in the new learning labs, his hands gently guiding them through coding exercises, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His words were always gentle, always encouraging, carrying the weight of lived experience and the light of hard-won hope. He often led informal workshops on street art techniques, demonstrating how beauty could be found and created anywhere, with any material. His former street art had found a new, legitimate home, celebrated for its raw honesty and evocative power within the very walls that once would have scorned it. His life, once defined by loss and isolation, was now overflowing with purpose, camaraderie, and the profound satisfaction of truly making a difference. He was honored as a hero, not just for his tenacity in seeking justice, but for his enduring compassion and his unwavering commitment to lifting others. Ethan dedicated a significant portion of his time to ensuring that no other deserving young person would suffer his fate. He became a passionate advocate for digital literacy and ethical technology use on a national level, his voice, once a whisper, now clear and resonant as he advised congressional committees on equitable access to technology and the arts. He didn't just speak, he acted. Collaborating closely with Liam Carter, his steadfast ally, who had since won a Pulitzer for his investigative journalism that exposed Julian Thorne, Ethan co-authored a memoir titled The Locket's Promise, From Shadows to Light. The book, a raw and poignant account of his life, from his forgotten childhood to his years of destitution and ultimate reclamation, became an unexpected bestseller. It resonated deeply with readers across the nation, inspiring widespread empathy for the homeless and driving significant tangible policy changes within government funding allocations for community support programs, especially those focusing on arts and vocational training. Crucially, a significant portion of the book's proceeds went directly back to the Phoenix Gallery and Haven Foundation and the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation, ensuring their long-term sustainability and continued expansion. The Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation had also soared, establishing innovative digital learning centers and vibrant art schools in underserved communities globally. Ethan personally led workshops, teaching young people, especially girls, how to code, how to critically analyze information, and how to use technology and art as tools for social good. He believed that artistic expression, combined with digital fluency, was the key to unlocking future potential. He provided grants for unconventional art forms, ensuring that mediums like street art, digital art, and performance art received the recognition and funding they deserved, challenging the narrow definitions that Julian Thorne had once enforced. He also established the Thorne Truth Scholarship, an irony not lost on him, fully funding higher education for bright, ambitious students from impoverished families, ensuring that talent, unlike his own past, was never suppressed by circumstance. The scholarship's motto, etched subtly on each recipient's certificate, was, "From silence, truth takes flight," a direct nod to his own arduous journey and the symbolic wooden bird and silver locket that had guided him. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artworks from marginalized artists throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish art as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. The story culminates on a warm, golden afternoon in the sun-drenched central courtyard of the flagship Phoenix Gallery and Haven in Viridia. The courtyard, meticulously tended by residents and volunteers, was a vibrant oasis of calm, alive with the buzzing of bees among newly planted flowers, the soft murmur of conversations from a communal cafe, and the distant, joyful sounds of children engaged in an outdoor art class. Ethan sat on a rustic wooden bench, custom-built by the Haven's carpentry program. The bench's design subtly incorporated elements of the Celtic knot from his locket, its intricate curves carved into the polished wood. He was surrounded by a small group of young students from the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation's mentorship program. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of respect and quiet hope, as he shared a story not of grand victories, but of small acts of kindness that had kept his spirit alive during his darkest days. He emphasized the importance of resilience, of finding beauty in unexpected places, and of using one's unique voice to create change. These young individuals, once facing uncertain futures, were now empowered and thriving, their eyes holding the promise of new beginnings, a testament to the Haven's transformative power. In his hand, Ethan held the original, now beautifully polished silver locket. Its surface, gleaming under the afternoon sun, reflected the verdant hues of the courtyard and the bright, hopeful faces of the children. The intricate Celtic knot design, once dulled by time, now shone with renewed brilliance, a testament to its enduring legacy. He turned the original charm slowly in his palm, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. The faint, warm hum that had always accompanied it seemed stronger now, a comforting presence. The little wooden bird, carved by his own hand years ago, was now incorporated into the Haven's official logo, subtly etched onto the entrance sign, its wings outstretched in hopeful flight, symbolizing the freedom and upliftment the center provided. He looked up, his eyes, once weary and shadowed, now reflecting a deep, serene joy and an unbreakable spirit, as he watched a group of children from the Haven playfully release a flock of homing pigeons into the clear blue sky from the rooftop garden. The pigeons circled once, twice, then flew off towards the horizon, a powerful gesture symbolizing hope, freedom, and the promise of a brighter future for all. The street artist, once dismissed and forgotten, had not only unveiled a family secret that changed everything, but had become the architect of a new, more compassionate world, where art truly belonged to everyone. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.